Hello and welcome. We have another challenge for you. This challenge assignment is going to test your ability, your understanding of data types and variables, more or less. So what I would like you to do is I want you to write a program that will display the perimeter and the area of a rectangle. And so the actual requirements for this are you're going to need to create 4 variables of type double. You're going to need to create a variable to store the width of the rectangle, a variable to store the height of the rectangle, a variable to store the perimeter of the rectangle, and a variable to store the area of the rectangle. All right, so we should understand how to create variables and then also how to initialize and assign variables by now using the assignment operator. But the first thing we need to do is create the variables. So you need to have 4 variables of type double. You're going to need to create a C project, which we'll get to in a second. But also the program needs to perform some calculations. We have not actually learned how to do calculations yet because we haven't talked about operators. So I'm going to give this code to you. It's pretty simple to create calculations in a C program. You just use operators like mathematical operators. So for example, in C, if you want to add 2 variables together, you use a plus. If you want to multiply 2 variables against one another, you use a asterisk. And so to calculate the perimeter of a rectangle, you have to actually add the height and the width and then multiply that by 2. It's very easy to do. Like I said, I'll give you this code. The main focus of this challenge is for you to understand how to create variables, how to use them, and how to define data types. Area is also going to need to include a calculation. Here, you're just going to multiply the width times the height using the asterisk. I didn't want to just create a simple challenge that didn't make sense, so I wanted to make it more relatable. And so I thought a rectangle, perimeter, and area, yeah, that's pretty good. It has some calculations in it, but you won't have to worry about that. So also, what you need as the output for this program is you're going to display the height, the width, and the parameter variables in the correct format. And so the other thing that you're going to learn through this challenge is how to use the printf function to display the value of variables. So you're going to need to understand format specifiers. You're going to need to understand an escape sequence for the \n. So you print out line feeds. So the first display should be the perimeter. The second display should be the area with the height and the width as well. Okay, so for some tips for this assignment or hints, you're going to need to create a project in code blocks. You should use a meaningful name for this project. Since this project is, and this program is basically creating the perimeter and area of a rectangle, you could name the project rectangle. That's really the simplest thing. When you create the project in code blocks, remember that by default, the code blocks is automatically going to create a C source file for you. It's going to be named main.c. You can go ahead and use that for this project. You don't need to delete it. In our first challenge, we deleted it because I wanted to make sure you know how to create your own C source files. But in this case, use the advantage of them already creating it for you. So main.c is just going to be an empty template with a main function in it. Remember, the main function is the entry point. After you have the main.c file, you're going to need to edit it. And as I mentioned, you need to create some variables. And the variables have to be of type double. So you should at least create a couple variables for height and width of type double. And you should initialize them. Initialize means that you set an initial value to them. You can initialize things using the equals operator. You end it with a semicolon. You'll want to initialize this to something, anything you want, something useful. We're not getting input from the user for this program, but you could, if you wanted to, if you felt comfortable, you could pass in command line arguments, but I didn't think that you guys are ready for that yet. So you can just hard code the variables to anything, 50, 100, 23.5, 92.7. Remember, they're doubles, so they can contain decimals. But you can just hard code these variables to a particular value. And they should be something other than 0, else you won't see decent output. As far as the other variables, the perimeter and area values, those are going to be calculated, so you don't want to assign any data to them hard-coded. You can just initialize them to 0.0. And then later in the program, you can assign values to them based on your calculations. So here's the code that you would use for the perimeter calculation and the area calculation. If you created 2 variables of type double named perimeter and area, all you would need to do is say equals to calculate the perimeter 2.0 times height plus width inside parentheses ending with a semicolon. To calculate the area, you would just assign area variable using the equals symbol, equals operator, width, and then the asterisk for times, and then height, and then the semicolon. So you can copy and paste the perimeter and area things right here in your program after you've declared and initialized all your variables. This is really the only logic of the program. Just do a couple calculations. After we've done those calculations, you then want to display the value of the two perimeters, or two variables, perimeter and area, and also height and width you should display as well. So you're going to need to use the printf function, and you're going to have to use the correct format specifier to display the required output. Format specifier for doubles, I mentioned, is %f, so you want to use that. You can play around with it as well and use like %f2 to see how the precision changes for the number of decimal points. If you're, and again, use meaningful names for everything. After you're done doing that, you should compile and link and then test, run the program. Okay, and again, play around with this program, try different things, try changing variables, data types, try printing out different variables using different data type format specifiers. If you're feeling really, really ambitious, add command line arguments to the program, and the command line arguments could be the width and the height. Read those in from the main function and use those to do your calculations for perimeter and area. And again, in our previous thing where I gave you the code width and height, I'm assuming that you created two variables called height and width, all lowercase, or else this code won't work. And those are common names for this actual functionality. So that's about it. Again, I'll provide another demonstration of how you complete this program along with the source code. So good luck. And lastly, also, don't forget to analyze the output to confirm it's correct. If it's incorrect, you have to go back, do your editing, do your saving, and doing your rebuilding.